Now, Viviva watercolours, what are they? Are these actually watercolours or are they inks? So I'm going to give this a try and see how they perform through my unboxing video, and also for a painting I'm going to do of working on a lovely hummingbird using these very same paints. So let's make a start and have a look at how these work. Well, here it is. I've been sent some lovely paints by vivivawatercolours.com. Alright, so I'm going to open this up and have a quick look inside for the first time, and let's see what we can find, and let's see also at the end of this video where I'll paint a hummingbird using these colours. Now this will be a very honest review because I'm not paid or commissioned by Viviva Watercolours, so let's get started. Now the set that they've sent me is the original Sketchers set. Can't say Sketchers. 16 colours with a water brush. Now I've never used a water brush, so we'll see how I get on with that. I may just kind of play with that idea, but I don't think it will do the detail work which I need my paints to do normally, because you know the kind of detail I like to work to. Now Viviva have also sent me their Metallics set as well, which is a brand new product out on the market, so I'm looking forward to trying those out within the painting as well. But apparently this is a revolutionary new watercolour idea, so let's see what they're like. Now, there's plenty of information on the box itself, so it tells you all about the vibrancy, that they're portable, that they're long lasting, and also that apparently they're biodegradable, and even a little briefing about the story of these paints as well. And actually, if you do go to their website, you find some information about how it all started at university, believe it or not, and so on and so on. And it's a family run business, so have a look on their website, vivivacolors.com, spelled the American way, so there's no U in the word colour. Okay, I prefer it the other way around, I like to have the U in there. And of course you find all the information that you need about all the products that they produce. And also don't forget the history behind the products as well. Now the colours themselves, when I look through these colours like the deep pink and the crimson and all the varieties that we've got here, they don't look the same as they would normally do in, say for example, my Winsor & Newton watercolour palettes. So they're completely different the way they look. And I think it's because the pigments of the, I think these are probably ink actually saying this, the pigments of the ink are more highly concentrated. So it's only until you wet the colour that you actually see the true colour itself. Now there are little colour marks at the bottom of each individual sheet to give you probably an idea of the way the colours look, you know. Plus when you look at the word underneath each colour, you can actually put the colour over the top of that word, so paint over the top of each word that you've got there. But I'm going to make a colour kind of test card, if you know what I mean, like a colour swatch. At least that way around I can see which colours I've got and how they're going to look when I start to use these within a painting of a hummingbird I'm going to do very shortly. Now I did notice as well when I was flicking through the colour sheets, the colour burnt umber, or number 7 in this case, is missing. I know, missing, which I must admit was very, very surprising. So I got straight onto the emails and very quickly Viviva Colours got straight back to me and sent me a duplicate set as well. So I mean that's all the way from India and all the way to here in the United Kingdom. Right, okay, so at least that way now I've actually got 2 sets of these. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with these 2 sets very shortly. Now apparently you got a little card on the back where you can just stick down, there's a double-sided bit of tape on there, of which you can use that as a mixing palette using these colours. So if you want to do it that way you can. The only thing I've found by handling these so far, which I'm going to go through for the video as I say, is, well, they get on your hands a little bit, they are a little bit messy. So again, let's see how well they work in that sense. Now they've also sent me as part of the kit a water brush. Now I've never used a water brush before in my entire existence, so it's going to be something different. So I'm going to play with that I think off camera and see how I get on with that, because it's I don't think I'm going to be able to achieve the detail which I normally like to work on when I'm working with my fine art with watercolours, okay? So I'm going to have a play with that and see how well it works. But the feeling, because you've got a reservoir of water within inside it, it's going to gradually keep seeping through the bristles when it's in a vertical position, which means that your colour will constantly get diluted all the time. And for me, for the fine details, that just wouldn't work. But I think it'll be fine for doing loose washes with instead. Now they've also sent me a watercolour book as well, which I'm looking forward to trying out. It's a different kind of pad of paper that I'm used to. I'm used to using a a 300 GSM paper or £140, and this one's a little bit thinner, a little bit lighter at £120. So therefore, I'm just thinking, will it cockle, will it buckle as I start painting, as I start wetting that paper? Well, we'll find out very soon. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make up a colour chart using these colours and also the metallic range as well. But as you can see from the metallic range, there's quite a variety of colours there, aren't there? So let's see what we can do and just get all these test colours done, ready if we want to start on the hummingbird painting very shortly. Now the first thing I wanted to do, as I mentioned, is make up a colour chart using all of these colours. At least that way I can compare my colour chart to the reference photograph. Just kind of get some general idea on the kind of colours I want to use to create something very similar to what I can see within that reference photo. But when I apply these colours onto the watercolour surface, I want to make sure that all these colours are kind of gradated. So we've got like a lighter end of the spectrum through to the darker end. At least that way around I can see sort of the tonal variations within each individual colour. So do this as well if you've got these colours, okay, with the first set of 16 and then the set of 10 for those metallic range down below. Now don't forget, you can do this whatever size you want to do it. So you can do it in long thin strips if you prefer it that way around. At least that way you can probably make it a little bit easier to kind of match up to that reference photograph. And when I've finally got this done, then I can make a start on that hummingbird painting, which I'm looking forward to having a go with and playing with these new, well, paints. Let's give it a go. Now one last very quick thing I want to mention as well. When you're looking at these colour sheets, they do tend to make a little bit of a mess with your fingers, they really do. So when you look at my thumbs, you can just see, and the rest of my fingers, the colour that I've got on there. Now these, as I said, are most likely inks, and because of that, they do tend to stain your skin a little bit. So when I scrubbed my hands after doing this, I did find it took a little while to get all of that ink off, and that was a lot of scrubbing as well. So what I'd recommend that they do with something like this is have each individual sheet separated, so you can take each one away and there's nothing on the back, so each one's individual, if you know what I mean. At least that way around you can just spread them around in front of you, can't you? And then just pick up the ones that you want to work on rather than flipping backward and forward and, well, try not to get paint on the other side really. The problem is they recommend that you let it dry first before you fold the sheets back over again, and you really haven't got time for that, you just want to get on and paint. So if these were detachable, well, we can just spread them out in front of you like an array of colours, that for me will be much easier and of course less messy. But on the other side of the coin, I've just got to say that if you're using these out in the field, I can see the reason behind them, I really can, because at least that way you've got them all in one little booklet. Now I'm quite fortunate in a sense because Viviva Watercolours sent me more than one version of the same product, and that's because if you remember on the earlier part of the video that I was missing Burnt Umber, and I mentioned that to them, and they are a very good company, I have to admit, because of the fact that they got straight back to me and got another version of this in the post. So because I've got two sets, I'm able to kind of separate all of these cards out, just cut them out from the from the pad, as you can see, from the colour sheets, and that way I can just kind of look at the ones I want to use. So I'm going to go through this by using two different versions, or should I say two copies of the same paints. I have noticed, by the way, when you look at the other side of this one, which is the same colours as that one, look at the difference in that. So I'm not sure that when these are made, that the application of the ink, when they put it on there, is of different thicknesses, different consistencies. So it's worth kind of just noting that as well for Viviva Colours, so they're aware of that. So you will find that from different ones that you get. If you get more than one version of the same thing, now that one's not too bad on that one, as you can see. About this one here. See, that's the Burnt Umber one, so I was missing that. See, that's different to the Burnt Sienna, isn't it? See what I mean? So it's just well worth just bearing that in mind. Now I like to start off with a little bit of graphite back paper, and I slide that between the printout and the watercolour surface. And all you got to remember to do when you do this, use a medium pressure when you're pressing onto that. So imagine pressing onto the back of your hand, okay, but not too hard. If it hurts, you're pressing too hard. But try not to press too hard because you don't want to damage the paper underneath. And then I've got to start thinking about the colours. Now I'm thinking about probably slate black and maybe, I don't know, really trying to think what I can have with that. Black tends to be a little bit kind of flat on its own, so I might go for a bit of Burnt Umber with that as well. I mean, so far when I'm working with these colours, just for testing this out, They seem to kind of dilute very easily, which is good. I can see that working really well. And you can also mix colours together. So if I get a little bit of burnt umber, as you can see here, and add that into the slate black, they mix fine, no problem whatsoever. The only thing I find an issue for me as a watercolourist is I need very often to work with 4 different consistencies, from watery, milky, creamy and obviously thick. And I can't get a really creamy consistency with this because you can't really work it, so it's just barely paintable, not like you can with watercolours. That's why, even though these are obviously water soluble or water based pigments or inks, in my eyes anyway, for me I wouldn't really class them as being watercolours for that reason. As for applying the paint, using my size 00 brush, I can actually put the paint on quite neatly with this. It's not too bad actually, it doesn't run down the bristles or anything like that, it's not too runny to work with, and you can work with it quite well. The only thing you've got to bear in mind though when you're working with anything like this is that the colours tend to be more of a semi-permanent state. So when you try to remove some of the paint off the paper, then you will find, yes, a little bit will come off, but not all, so it will stain that paper quite a lot. But I do find that you can get quite a lot of detail with these, as long as you don't overload your brush. So you can see I'm not trying to put too much paint on that brush when I'm working on this. So a little bit of violet, a little bit of Persian blue. So again, wet the surface first, because once you touch that paper with these pigments and you find it could kind of instantly kind of stick, you can lightly soften them a little bit, I found out, but not a lot. So again, these are completely different to using watercolours, they really are. I do like the vibrancy of these colours. I mean, look at this purple I've made up, and the way that goes onto the paper, it's just, whoa, that's too much. You know, remember those little colouring books that you can get, you know, which are the adult colouring books? I think that these will be quite good for those as well. I know it sounds daft, but they really will be quite useful for that sort of thing. But also don't forget, you can use these to other projects as well. So if you want to do a loose painting, you can use them for that. Or if you want to do a more detailed painting like I do, they obviously do work for that as well. But remember, it's a completely different medium you're working with. It's not watercolours as we know in the traditional sense. As I say, these are more or less, to me anyway, more ink-based colours. And also, believe it or not, without being too critical with these, for cartoon work, if you want to paint kind of cartoon paintings, you find that these should work quite well for that. Because you can still blend them, which is the main thing, you can still blend them, and you still get that really bright kind of vivid colour. So a little bit of light green have kind of dropped into that slate black, and you can see they mix quite well. The only thing I've found, again, which is a little bit of a negative, is that I can't get the really dark tones, because when these dry, yeah, they dry fairly dark, but they're not really black, really pitch black colour, which is what I'm looking for. Now, because I've already put a wash on the forehead, as you can see on this beautiful bird, you'll find as well when I add the slate black over the top of that, it just blends, it softens, as you can see from the side angle here. So it's kind of blended in a little bit, it's softened on those fine lines. And I really want that to be really dark in places, but I can't really achieve that darkness when I'm trying to go over the top of another colour. Now, as I said, this is a Sketchers set, which comes with one of those brushes as well, one of those water brushes, which I have not used. I had to play with it very briefly off camera, but it's not something that I would use. Other people will use that. It depends on the kind of painting style that you like to do. If you're a very loose artist, a very loose painter, you will find it's quite beneficial. Especially if you kind of go out and about and kind of paint in the field, so to speak. I mean, that's what it's designed for as well, isn't it? So you don't need to take any water with you or anything like that as you go out and about painting away. All you need is your pad of paper and your brushes, and obviously your flip book of colour sheets. So just to recap on the sketchbook I'm using here, by the way, so this is the one that they've provided as well. As I mentioned, it's 5.8 inches by 8.3 inches, and it's a 240 gram or 120 pound paper in weight, which is a little bit lighter and thinner than the one I would normally use. There's 64 pages, and it's made by a company called Lazebo Design Papers. Again, I've never heard of them, but I must admit, painting this at the moment, it's coming out right actually. I quite like the way that the ink is flowing. I'm calling it ink now, I know. The ink is flowing onto the paper quite well, and it does blend in really well. The only thing I find with anything like this is that if you want to take that piece of paper off, the problem with this one is that it's glued on the top as well as stitched. So you would need to cut it off by using a craft knife or a very sharp pair of scissors. So that's a little bit of an issue, but you do get, believe it or not, in the back of this this book as well of paper, is that there's a little wallet in the back where you can, if you do take a piece of paper off, then you can slide it into that wallet. Okay, back to the painting, and you can see I'm working on some of the details now around the chest, but I'm trying to work in directional strokes all the time. So I'm thinking about the overall shape of each individual feather that we can see, but also the lines, or the way the lines go. Now when I work on a painting, I'm always considering the direction of the lines. So I tend to akin it to something like a clock face. I know, bear with me, is that you got to think about the direction of the lines. So they're pointing towards, say, 10 o'clock, then you got to remember you're painting those lines in the 10 o'clock direction. If the feathers or fur, in whichever you're painting, is pointing towards 7 o'clock, then you do the same, and so on and so on and so on. But also allowing for overlapping of lines, and also the thickness of the lines as well, which obviously is very, very important. Now I'm going to try and get this paint probably towards a thicker state if I can, and that's just by dragging just a lightly dampened brush through the colour. In this case it's slate black, isn't it? So back to wetting down the area, and I'm trying to think about having something reasonably wet to begin with, because I know it's going to dry ever so quick, and then you can add in your colour straight from, well, from the card really in this case, can't I? And gradually carry on and building up those details, and trying to consider the overall form and shape as well. And not overloading that brush, remember, when you're working on small areas like feet and toes. In this case, like feet and claws. And again, this is where you can go straight from the colour cards straight to the painting. Now during the process I've been adding in just the odd occasional colour, which is going to be the metallic brand as well, and you find that some of the colours I've got on the painting here now are some of the vibrant greens that we got within the metallic range, and that's what I'm looking at. So I've actually put on jade and emerald throughout the process. So far what I've found with all of these colours is that they work really well, and they are so bright, so vibrant. I know I said that earlier on, but it's very true, they really are. And I think it's something worth playing with, it's something worth having a go, and then seeing if it's the right kind of thing that you will enjoy working with. And of course it doesn't break the bank to buy them either. But I do feel this is going to be one of those personal choices, and it depends on whether you're too fussed about getting your hands covered in ink, because obviously that's what happens very often. It certainly did with me. So you got to consider that when you're working on something like this, because of the fact that they can be quite messy. And because they can be quite messy, how would that be if you're out and about in the fields, so to speak, or painting some landscape somewhere, and you've got your hands covered in paint? So, okay, bear that in mind. Take some cleaning stuff with you, some cleaning kind of rags with you, so you can give your fingers a clean thereafter, or during the process. Because the problem I've got when I'm trying to work with a more of a illustrative style, such as this one here, where there isn't a background, I don't want my fingers to touch that background. And my fingers, I've got quite a bit of paint on there, quite a bit of pigment from these, as I say, the pads like this one here. And that's the kind of thing that bothers me quite a lot. You can cover the paper up around the outside edge of the image, so you can do it that way around. So that wouldn't be an issue if you kind of applied that method, which I've done a few times in the past, just using normal watercolours even. So my verdict for something like this really is, it's okay. The colours are really bright, they are messy. They need to look at the way that the colour sheets are designed within their flip books, because of the fact you need to be able to detach individual sheets so you can lay them down if you're working from home, without obviously getting lots and lots of colour all over your fingers. So if you can lay them down and all the colours were on their own piece of card, so there's nothing on the back, if you see what I mean, so there's no point trying to lay it down and turning it over, especially when one side's still wet, then that for me would work much better. So having a facility where, yes, you can have it as a flip book if you want to be able to take out in the field, but also when you're home you can separate the individual sheets, and that for me would work much better. To me, they kind of resemble things we used to have when we were children. Do Do you remember those? Where you used to get your big colouring sheets, and around the edge of those sheets very often got little swatches, little blocks of colour, didn't you? Which were actually just painted onto the paper, but really thick pigment. And all you do then is go there with a damp clean brush and just wet that pigment on the paper, then take it across to the main picture where you can start your painting. I remember those sheets when I was a kid, and they were really good fun. So what do you think to these? So is this something that you would use, and is it something that you've used in the past? Like I just said, something what you used when you was a child. Do you remember those days? Post a comment down below and please let me know. Now look at the video to the right where I paint a bird using normal watercolours and watercolour techniques.